Let me ask you something. When you say, "I feel lost," do you mean you don't know what to do? Or do you mean you don't recognize who you are anymore? Because those are not the same. And one of them is not a problem. It's a signal. If you've been feeling disconnected lately, like your old motivations stopped working, like your routines feel empty, like the future looks blurry even when nothing bad is happening, you're not crazy and you're not weak. You're in a specific psychological state that most people mislabel as being lost. What's really happening is this: your mind is trying to move forward while your identity is still living in the past. That friction feels like confusion. It feels like anxiety. It feels like being lost, but it's something else. Imagine your life has doors, not literal doors, phases, identities, versions of you. There was a door called who you used to be, and for a long time you lived behind it. Maybe you were the responsible one, the people pleaser, the one who always had a plan, the one who stayed quiet, the one who survived. Then one day, without asking permission, that door started to close. Not because you failed, because you outgrew it. Now you're standing in a corridor, a space between doors, the in-between. In that corridor, everything echoes. Every doubt sounds louder. Every feeling feels like a warning. Every choice feels permanent. That's why it's easy to say, "I'm lost." But being in the corridor doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're transitioning. When you feel lost, it's rarely because you don't have options. It's because you don't have a stable self to choose from. Your old identity used to make decisions automatically. It had rules, it had a role, it had a script. When that identity begins to break, your brain panics. Because uncertainty is a threat signal for the nervous system. So your mind starts overthinking, looping, searching for the perfect path, replaying old mistakes, trying to predict everything before taking one step. That's not intuition, that's self-protection. If you don't understand the difference, you'll treat the corridor like a prison instead of a passage. Today, we're going to decode this. You'll see the signs that prove you're not lost. You're between identities. You'll understand why you feel stuck. And you'll learn the questions that clear your mind so you can choose your next direction without fear. Not with magical thinking, with psychological clarity and awareness. Because your confusion is not random. It's organized. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Let's begin with the first sign. The first sign you're between identities is subtle. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It begins as a quiet shift inside you. You start realizing you no longer fit the life you're living, not in a dramatic way, just in a quiet, uncomfortable way. Nothing is necessarily wrong, nothing is collapsing, but something feels slightly out of place. There's a tightness in your chest when you think about staying the same, a pressure you can't explain, a sense that the walls are closer than they used to be. Conversations that once felt engaging now sound repetitive, like you've heard them 100 times before. Your daily routine feels mechanical. Wake up, move, repeat, without meaning attached to it. Even your achievements feel strangely empty. You reach something you wanted, and the satisfaction fades almost immediately. This is not laziness. It's not a lack of discipline. It's not weakness. It's misalignment. Your external life is no longer synchronized with your internal evolution. Your current environment was built for a version of you that no longer exists. And your nervous system senses this mismatch before your conscious mind does. That's why it feels uncomfortable. That discomfort you feel when nothing is technically wrong is a signal. That subtle irritation when you repeat the same patterns is a signal. That unexplained restlessness that shows up at night is also a signal. It's not random. Your mind is reacting to an identity that's expanding. You are stretching beyond the limits of who you used to be. Growth often feels like tension first. But here's where most people get trapped. They misinterpret expansion as failure. They sit alone and think, why can't I just be grateful? Why am I never satisfied? They look at their life from the outside and see stability. But inside, something feels incomplete. They assume something is wrong with them for wanting more without knowing what more even is. But satisfaction belongs to the identity that created your current life. And that identity is fading. You are not built for that old room anymore. You've grown taller, wider, more aware. When you outgrow a space, it doesn't explode. It shrinks quietly around you. Every day it feels a little tighter, a little more suffocating, a little less aligned. If you ignore this feeling, you'll start doubting yourself instead of questioning the environment. You'll say, I must be lost. I must be confused. When in reality, what's happening is much deeper and much more powerful. You are not lost. You are evolving into someone your current life cannot yet contain. The second sign you're between identities is not confusion, it's paralysis. You don't lack options, you lack clarity about which version of you is choosing. Every path seems possible. And that's exactly what makes it overwhelming. You analyze everything. You imagine outcomes. You rehearse conversations in your head. You try to predict the future before taking one step. But prediction is not intuition. It's control, disguised as safety. Your mind believes if it calculates enough variables, it will eliminate risk. So you delay decisions, not because you're incapable, but because you want certainty. You wait for a sign, a feeling, a guarantee. But identity transitions rarely come with guarantees. They come with tension, ambiguity, silence. And in that silence, your anxiety gets louder. You start confusing urgency with guidance. You mistake fear for intuition. Real intuition is calm. It doesn't scream. It doesn't rush you. Anxiety, on the other hand, demands immediate action or immediate retreat. So you freeze. Because both voices sound convincing. One says, move now. The other says, stay safe. And without a stable identity, you don't know which voice belongs to your future self. This is why you feel stuck. Not because there is no door, but because you haven't decided who is walking through it. When identity is unclear, every choice feels irreversible. Every step feels permanent. Every mistake feels catastrophic. So you delay. You overthink. You loop. But staying still is also a decision, and it slowly reinforces the version of you that fears expansion. Paralysis feels safe in the short term, but it quietly becomes the prison of unrealized potential. The third sign you're between identities is quiet, but deeply emotional. You're grieving a version of yourself, not because you failed, but because you changed. And change always requires a small death. You don't just lose habits, you lose familiar reactions, you lose predictable patterns, you lose the comfort of knowing exactly who you are. Even if that version of you was limited, it was known, it was safe. There's a strange sadness in outgrowing yourself, because growth is not only expansion, it's separation. You begin noticing you don't react the same way anymore. Things that once triggered you now feel distant. People who once defined you no longer feel aligned. And that creates space. But space can feel like loneliness before it feels like freedom. You might miss who you used to be, even if that person was surviving instead of thriving. The mind prefers familiarity over uncertainty. So it tries to pull you backward. It whispers, at least you knew who you were. But going back would require shrinking. And shrinking is not peace, it's avoidance. Real evolution feels disorienting because the old map no longer applies. You are walking forward without the identity that once guided you. And that grief is proof that you are transforming. The fourth sign, you're between identities, is subtle but powerful. Your mind begins negotiating with the past. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It suggests that maybe things weren't that bad before. You start romanticizing old versions of yourself, old routines, old relationships, old comfort zones. You forget the tension you once felt there. You only remember the familiarity. The brain is wired to prefer predictability over potential because predictability feels safe, even if it slowly suffocates growth. So your thoughts begin constructing arguments for why you should return. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I should just settle. Maybe I expected too much. But these thoughts are not clarity. They are fear seeking stability. The nervous system does not crave purpose, it craves certainty. And certainty often lives in the past. The old identity had rules, it knew how to behave, it knew how to survive. Your new identity is undefined, and undefined feels dangerous. So your mind tries to rebuild the old structure because structure reduces anxiety. But rebuilding what you outgrew creates inner resistance. You begin feeling drained when you imagine going back. Your body tightens, your chest feels heavy, your energy lowers. That physical reaction is information. Expansion feels uncertain, but contraction feels heavy. Pay attention to the weight. When a decision makes you smaller, quieter, less alive, that is regression. When a decision scares you but energizes you at the same time, that is growth. Fear and expansion can coexist, but numbness and regression usually arrive together. The mind wants relief, the soul wants evolution, and between those two forces, you feel divided. If you choose relief too often, you reinforce the old identity. But if you tolerate uncertainty long enough, clarity begins to form from within. Now, pause for a moment, not to think, but to observe. Take one slow breath in and let it out without forcing anything. Notice where your body feels tight when you imagine staying exactly the same. Now notice where your body feels open when you imagine moving forward. Don't judge the sensation, just register it. Your body often knows before your thoughts do. Ask yourself quietly, what version of me is trying to survive right now? Is it the version that needed safety, approval, certainty? Or is it the version that is ready for expansion? Feel the difference. One feels heavy. One feels alive. Now ask a deeper question. If I stopped trying to control the outcome, what direction would feel honest? Not impressive, not safe, but honest. Notice the first answer that arises before fear interrupts it. That answer is usually quieter than anxiety. It does not rush you. It does not demand proof. It simply exists as a calm knowing. You are not lost. You are reorganizing. Your old identity is dissolving so a more aligned one can form. This space you're in is not emptiness. It is construction. The discomfort is not punishment. It is expansion stretching beyond old limits. And expansion feels unstable before it feels powerful. You don't need all the answers today. You only need the courage to not shrink back. Clarity is not found by forcing decisions. It is revealed when you stop betraying your own evolution. You were never lost. You were standing in the space between who you were and who you are becoming. If this resonated with you, stay here. Subscribe. This channel exists to decode the signals most people ignore. And in the comments, tell me this. Are you afraid of moving forward or of going back?